All right, so we're going to look at how to calculate man hours. So to calculate man hours, we need three things. We need the number of persons that are doing the work, or the manpower, the number of days these persons are working for, and the number of hours being worked each week. And then all you have to do is multiply them to get your man hours. So what I'm going to do, you see I already have the titles here: number of persons, number of days, number of hours worked, and man hours. So underneath the man hours heading, I'm going to just type the equal sign, and then I'm going to click in this cell here. So we see up here in the formula bar, we see equals A3. So beside that, I'm going to just shift the asterisk, click here, shift asterisk, click here, and press enter. So this is a multiplication of these three. So suppose we want to know how many man hours would have been worked if 5 people work for 5 days for the week at 8 hours each. We get 200 man hours. So this is how much work output is done by 5 people working 5 days a week, 8 hours a week. Now, just something to note: some people will use man hours as manpower as well, but I prefer to use manpower as number of persons and man hours as man hours. It's a little bit clearer. All right. So let's say you want to know, in the same 1 week, working 8 hours a day each, how many persons, how much manpower would I need to complete 1,000 hours of work in 1 week? So we already know that we want the work done in 1 week. We already know that everybody works a maximum of 8 hours. Now, with a little bit of cheating, 200 times 5 equals 1,000, right? And we could, we could spin this formula so we could put the input in the man hours section, but just to keep it simple, if 5 times 200 gives you 1,000, and these things are fixed, this is the only variable. So if we multiply this by 5 times 5 is 25, and we're going to just drag the formula down these cells. We see 25 persons would be needed to work in the same amount of time to output 1,000 hours. This comes in handy when you have a job to do and you know that the job is going to require 1,000 man hours of work, and you know that you only have this limited time, and henceforth this helps you to calculate how many people you're going to need in order to complete the job in that time. So what if we want to do a different calculation? Suppose we know we only have 5 men, and suppose we know they can only work 8 hours a week, and we want to find out how many days would it take to do, 400 hours of work. Let's put in 10. And I only knew that because we have 200 here. 200 times 2 is 4. 2 times 5 is 10. And how did I know to choose this one? Is because this is already fixed. This is already fixed. So it's going to take 5 men, 10 days or 2 weeks, working at 8 hours a day to achieve 400 hours of work. So suppose we have 5 men and they're working for 10 days, but they need to output 1,000 hours of work. So we could multiply this by a factor to figure out what will give us 1,000, or we could put some numbers in here on the number of hours worked each week and see. If we put in 10, we get 500, right? So if we put in 20, we get 1,000. So these men would have to be severely overworked, working 20 hours a day for 10 days in order to achieve 1,000 hours of work. And of course, that's not sustainable. That's cruel to the human being. So naturally, you would say that this is not safe in terms of work hours. But this is how you would, calculate things. You can use this to predict how many days you will need for a certain amount of people to do things. Maybe you can even look at, maybe you've completed a certain amount of the job already and done X amount of man hours, but you have a certain amount of man hours left and you're trying to figure out how much manpower will you need to complete that in a certain amount of time, or how much time will you need with the existing persons to figure out, how many um, man hours are needed are left, etc. So I've left some questions for you guys in Teams to look at. See if I can show you them here. So these are the questions. And basically, you're going to have to use a little gymnastics to figure it out, but once you get the principle, it'll be easy. Question 1, if a job requires 5 animators, and animators means illustrators, storyboard artists, animators, modelers, riggers, etc. How many man hours will be needed per week for the project if each person works 8 hours a day for 3 times 5-hour weeks, right? Oh, sorry, this should be 3 times 5-day weeks. If a job requires 800 man hours and your company only has 5 days to complete this task, and each person can only work for, only a lot of typos here, 8 hours, how much manpower would the project need to be completed? Your company is working on a project that has been going on for the past 3 weeks with 5 people working 8 hours each. The job requires 1,000 man hours of work. You have only completed 600 so far. How many more days will you need to complete the project? This comes in very handy when you might be running behind and you need to tell your client how many days it's going to take to complete this project. Given that 5 men can complete a 2-minute animation in 2 weeks, working 10 hours a day, how many men would you need to finish a 5-minute animation in the same amount of time? And last question, given 5 men can complete a 2-minute animation in 2 weeks, working 10 hours a day, how many weeks would it take for the same number of men to complete 6 minutes of animation? And these are the questions that I'll leave you with. Have fun. I figure this will take you a while.